Yeah, I'm really glad to see these guys. I was wondering last week when I saw the group standings, like just how good the top tier ones were. Because I think last week I cast Sozin and Switchblade, I want to say. So on the bottom side of that group, and I was like, well, one of them actually performed really well. I forget which, but the Protoss is all I really remember. So I wondered how good could Bryan and AleC be as StarCraft Remastered. Not a ton of people, like not as much as StarCraft 2. So when you actually find people that are really good that are actually playing in the CSL, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Well, today is going to be a TVP, and I'm ready to get into it. Are you? And in the bottom left, as the red Terran, he is Rydia. Rydia? He's AleC. Rydia? Yeah, it definitely does. Maybe it is. The clan tag of the other guy is Baka, so it's a Final Fantasy 4. Yeah, it's a Final Fantasy 4 character, so maybe that's actually what he took it from. There seems to be overlap of nerds. That's absolutely correct. Not a weird fandom. So we do have a TVP, and this is my favorite matchup on either side of the coin, as Protoss, as Terran. I think it's really fun. Obviously, mech being the biggest difference. These guys are at the top of their groups, so they're really battling out to see who actually ends up topping it out at the last second. I don't know anything really more about these guys, but I assume that they have the basics down. They know a couple of really solid build orders, and their macro is enough to get them to the top of this group. Yeah, Terran main. I do Protoss sometimes. Zerg is too difficult, so I stopped. Both. So TVP is actually really difficult to play though. So watching it's definitely preferable. Watch everyone else have trouble against, X, Y, or Z. It's kind of a unanimous agreement amongst the veterans of Brood War. They warn people as they get into the new game that first of all it's a whole hard game in general, but also that Terran is going to be a little harder to get over the novice stage with. Because controlling the army is really what's difficult. The upside is that as a mech player, you kind of just turtle, which is perhaps a little bit easier in some ways, but the downside is the actual engagements in this matchup are so difficult to execute properly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm especially excited for it. So we do have Dragoon Range on the way. I forgot the name of it. Did I ever know the name of it? Oh, it's called Dragoon Range. So, okay, I definitely didn't know the name of it. Dragoon Range it is. But it was scouted by the SCV. I mean, this is just a really solid opener. You can actually double expand behind this with a very minimal aggression, as it gives you both the offensive properties as well as defensive properties. If you can kite well, if they are going for something cheesy. I don't think Bryan has scouted very much. Well, unfortunately, the vision in Brood War is broken when it comes to watching players. So obviously, Rydia was just in there, but it would show him not seeing anything, which is not true. Spider-Man. Yeah, they're really close together. I don't blame you. But Spider-Man, as the research is on the way, this does the real you see the progression of people getting better and better as Terran specifically, really as any race, of course, but specifically about the Vulture. You see them start actually using the Vulture and using Spider Mines because the initial draw, I think, is just tanks make big noises, do damage, right? But Vultures are actually a really key part of the matchup, and control of Spider Mines is really where you see players get better and better. But this is a push out here. It's not actually a two factory push, so the command center is coming down, and the Protoss player should be able to hold. Mhm. Yeah. So like a fake double, you apply this pressure while expanding. If your micro is really good, you can still actually kill the Protoss player. This is certainly something that, again, if the Terran micro is good, the Protoss players are gonna be losing tons of games to, as they figure out Brood War. But really, you just need some decent production. As we can see here, Dragoons are taking everything out. I will say that the main problem with that there is that, one, the Terran player committed when, again, I called this like a fake double. The pressure release was the end of the game. And then two, the spider mines weren't actually used in a fantastic way. They were set down almost as if he wanted to retreat to them, and then he didn't retreat. So they're probably. That's really dangerous. The observer is out, and even without the observer, you have enough dragoons. You can take out the Spider-Man before it hits your army. So it's really important that this tank goes on the high ground. In Brood War, though, you can see the high ground when you're attacked, and obviously, again, the observer is here. Messes up the micro right there. Woo, barely saves that one dragoon. I do think the Terran player is missing a lot of important things here. So it looks like he's going to be able to hold on. There's aren't enough dragoons. There's none reinforcing either. But losing a couple important tanks is always bad news. But I believe he's missing Vulture speed. So, I'm not 100% sure on that. But I was going to point out that he went for a starport, which feels a little weird. If he was going to add on a dropship, he'd have to add the control tower. And that's the only reason I could see is such an early starport, because otherwise you really don't need it until you're going to want to get into science vessels. It's always so weird to say anything like as secret bases in Brood War, because a lot of times they are just the typical bases, actually. Like, it's just such a weird, different game. But I was right, Vulture Speed wasn't done. That was just like a little too clunky, so he's just now getting that. That is a mistake. Should have been one of the first upgrades. Really consecutive upgrades off that tech lab. But he does want to know where that third base is. So whether it's supposed to be hidden or not, he did check the bottom right, which I would definitely say is the more typical place to put it. He's gonna finally be able to see that it's actually over here, and it's not gonna be a terrible place for him to push to. I'm kind of surprised that Bryan did put it there, because what's gonna happen is Rydia gets to a nice enough tank count, a good enough army count. He's going 5 factory. No, he's not. Just kidding. He's going 4 factory. Never mind. Anyways, he's actually gonna get to like a decent army count, right? And then he'll be able to push and perhaps expand as well into Bryan. And that's like usually the ideal situation for the Terran. Yeah, not the best use of the shuttle, right? Just because I got one missile turret. Yeah. Yeah, and the shuttle is actually a very scary tool, not just for harassment, like we would know it as like StarCraft 2 players, but that tool is essential sometimes to breaking tank lines. In fact, with all these spider mines placed like they were, they probably would have been much more effective dropping on top of the tanks. But another world, perhaps that happens. Bryan still is getting a strong economy, and that's how this game is played. Protoss gets the stronger economy, and Terran has to turtle up and slowly expand with mech. Protoss player has basically everything they'd want, going up to what looks to probably be Arbiters here with the Stargate. As the game progresses, it is going to flip to the Terran having the strong side, having a strong army, and you need that tech to really take care of it. I'm a little worried. This actually is going quite well for the Terran player. The tank of the high ground really messing things up for Bryan, and Spider Mine's getting too many hits. Finally cleans it up. So the Protoss player should definitely be in a better position right now. This is a couple of things. One, it is, definitely the damage he just took. But also, I think there has been some missteps in macro. The supply should always be favorable for the Protoss. It's like for anyone who plays StarCraft 2, right? It's like, Zerg used to be. But not having that supply right now, not having a few things to suddenly burst the supply either, makes me very worried. Rydia actually doing what he's doing right now is very dangerous. Like this isn't really a lot of tanks. And if Bryan had just built up a good supply on 3 bases, this tank line is probably broken. But instead, Bryan, again, messed up the micro perhaps, took some damage, and also is teching with double upgrades and straight into arbiters. So Rydia is going to be able to kind of get away with this 3rd base and perhaps even a faster 4th. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He takes out the bottom right base, by the way, which I was also going to note is a little weird. Bryan had the perfect setup to take a 4th base where he's taking it now. That should have been the 4th base, 100%. Kind of already protected almost by the fact he took the natural of this main base. So, not surprising that it died. So going into carriers might just end up being a fantastic move. I mean, again, if Bryan had just built up a huge army, there is potential bust opportunities here. But going for carriers, Viridia's not going to be pushing soon. You know, that third base doesn't have a gas, where he took it, so he kind of wants to wait for a fourth base. Transitioning into a lot of Goliaths is also going to be difficult. Not that Goliaths take a lot of gas, but he's already invested so much into the tanks, of course, that I don't think he realizes it's carriers either. So these Goliaths are really just like, oh, they'll take out observers, they'll take out some shuttles. They aren't anti-carrier numbers. It's a little concerning. Cool to see the Terran player drop, though. Again, going back to like the early leagues, it's just like, oh, I can turtle because I'm a mech player, so this is super easy. But actually getting the drops in here, that first one really messed up Bryan's third base, and that one even took a long time to clean up. So really commendable there. But he absolutely needs to scout the carriers. If that count gets up to like, I want to say 6, and you don't have preparations already in order, it's really difficult. You're gonna have to sacrifice your tanks and your vultures to buy time. Spam Goliaths if you have the bank, and if you don't, well, then you're in trouble. Oh, the one good news I would say is that when he does have to transition into Goliaths, the double upgrades are already on the way, and that's kind of the standard way to deal with carriers, is double upgrade Goliaths. I think this is actually something that Flash innovated, perfected, if you want to put it, if I'm not mistaken. But there's also other ways, like mass raids can sometimes do it, which is a little bit more funny. But Goliaths, you know, they gotta have those upgrades. Basically, some of them can unsiege and run across the map to continue buying time, but that's really the issue right now. The size of the map, the length between this third base and Viridia's natural initially favored his push really well, but now it's these carriers, he's going to need to emergency switch into Goliaths, which he's having a tough time doing. It's not a lack of gas or minerals or anything. He just is panicking probably and trying to buy as much time as possible, but he needs to start building like 7 Goliaths at a time. There we go. Command center, first of all, I'm pretty sure is improperly placed, and then a DT did a lot of damage to it. He does, as I was talking about with the gas, need this eventually. Right now he has a bank, and luckily Goliaths aren't too bad in the gas count. But you can't just forego like other ground units, tanks, and vultures, as they could be supplementing the carriers with speed lots and dragoons. But Viridia, I think, has held on long enough to get a decent Goliath count. So it's one thing to get the Goliath count, right? You don't know what's happening. Okay, you finally get the Goliath. It's another thing to actually chase down these damn carriers. Carrier micro is so much better, so much more potent in Brood War than in StarCraft 2, and taking positional advantage is also so much more potent. So it's like right now, it's actually the Sim City of the Terran that's really messing them up. What is happening? Well, it happens to both of ours, right, with the lobby. That was a bit of a hiccup. All right, then. Just fast forward on accident. Basically the same stuff happening with Goliath still trying to take this on. I was gonna, like, Goliaths can technically take on interceptors if there's enough of them, but it is, like, obviously more ideal to actually shoot down the carriers. He desperately needed to get some Goliaths to the low ground, which he finally does. It is, but meanwhile, Rydia just killed another base with their remaining ground forces and still has a bank to remake all those Goliaths. These carriers are ever caught in the middle of the map, they're pretty much dead too. I really think that the Terran players got a stranglehold on this game. Have you been muted this entire time? Have you been muted this entire time? Oh. I don't know, so... Oh, well that's beautiful then. Beautiful stuff. Well, at least some of it was, my side was hurt anyways. Oh, that's fixed. The carriers are, again, like, trading very efficiently. And this can certainly happen. You know, you can definitely come back from really bad scenarios with this tech swap, but this might just be too bad. You know, back down to one base mining. The main base has been mined out. I think this is just too much. Eventually, the carriers will die or they'll leave the game. GG.
Okay, well, GG. Sorry about being muted that whole time. And don't go anywhere, guys. We're going to be right back with our second map. You're watching the SCRCSL. I'm Joe, this is Zombie Grub, and we will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back. We are getting back into the CSL. Rydia is up 1-0 over his opponent, and we are about to be hopping in to see if he can close this out. Remember, this is only a best of 3, unlike the rest of the StarCraft 2 CSL. It's just a 1v1 between these two players. And both of these guys are undefeated, so one of them is going to lose that streak tonight. So without further ado, let's hop into our game. Spawning here in the top left-hand corner, we have our current winner. Can he close things out? It is Rydia.
Whoa, in the bottom right, now as Zerg, it's Bryan. Huh. I guess we couldn't notice if he played random or not, but I don't know if he's random or a race chooser.
Yeah, that's an interesting I'm trying to think of the word dynamic, I guess. Right? Like, because if he's a race chooser, that says something very different than if he's random. Like if he's a race chooser, maybe saying, you know, normally I like to play Protoss versus Terran, but something you were doing freaked me out, and I'm gonna go Zerg. But then if he's random, it's just like, we don't know if this is his better matchup, or maybe the game he showed us before is the best he can do.
This is gonna, well, obviously it's a very different matchup. Race choosing, it used to be like, I mean, I used to race choose before the ladder was open in the StarCraft Remastered. Maybe this guy just actually just likes playing all the races. Yeah. But so now that we're going to talk about a different matchup, all right? So TVP was one thing. TVZ, you do have bio included. Some people go right into mech, but more often it's either a mech transition later on, or SK Terran, which is like science vessels and bio. And the Zerg player does usually go for Spire play into Lurkers. That's the most typical TVZ you could possibly go for. But we have seen a lot of Zergs, I feel, in the CSL actually go for Lurkers, so kind of up in the air for me.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they want to do. It does look like Rydia is going to be a bit more active with the scouting. He's going to see his opponents as Zerg, and I wonder... You know, this is why I wish we knew if he was a random player or if he was race picking, because like that's two different things the scout can indicate, right? Like it's either, you know, if he's random, it's like, okay, you're going Zerg, like now I'm gonna kind of choose what I'm doing right now, and then maybe whatever he does in response to this tells us a little bit of information. But if he's just race picking, then he knows, and he's just trying to make sure nothing crazy is coming at him.
I want to say he chose his race just because the way that Rydia is open in both games is absolutely what you would do against both races. With how many multiplayer spawn point maps there are in Brood War, and they've played on 2 of them already, right? Fighting Spirit and Python. He could have gone accidentally for a 1 record span last game, for instance. Or this game, he could have gone for a fast factory accidentally. But this is actually what you would expect from both of the matchups. So that's why I think Bryan chose him, like, hey, I'm going to play this race. I'm switching things up, which is cool, though. So we'll see if his Zerg's any better than his Protoss. His Protoss wasn't necessarily, like, bad, of course, but there was, I feel, a couple moments where he just took too much damage, right, first of all. But then also the game plan, I wasn't sure was executed swiftly. You know, the carrier thing came, I feel, a little bit late after he'd already taken so much damage.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a stomp. Some of the games we see in the CSL are super one-sided, and that wasn't the kind of map that made me worried about him this map too much. So I'd like to see him do well as Zerg here, but losing this Overlord would be an unfortunate start. It looks like it should have enough health to just barely get out of those weapon ranges. 33. That's frustrating as a Terran player, I imagine.
Yeah, it is. I really like the way that Rydia has set up his bases, by the way. So the 2 barracks, of course, typical opener, but then specifically the bunker and the supply depot. Stopping the wraparound of Lings is very important, and playing safe. So many losses come in Brood War as a player with even, like, honestly, 5,000 games, I want to say, right? This happens to, like, Flash, where 20 Lings are made at an odd time and kill you before your Marine count's high enough. Marines are garbage before they get upgrades, and they're not that great even after they get upgrades.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what's triggering Rydia to just be constantly scouting. You want to see that third base going down. You want to make sure you know that your opponent's not throwing anything crazy at you this second. It's so important to have key information because this game can just turn on its head in an absolute moment. And now Rydia is going to come in. He's going to see what the larva is being spent on. He's going to see the drones out mining, and that should hopefully give him like a little bit of sense of reassurance that he's a bit safer here.
By the way, Rydia is the one that has lost a game, not a series, but a game, whereas Bryan is undefeated. But I'm looking, I think the guy he lost the game to, Sozin, I think he was a cheesy Protoss, if I remember last week correctly. And not to say that's the only way you could possibly win against this guy, but Rydia does seem fairly strong. I think his build orders are being executed as someone that actually like studies Brood War. And a cheese possibly could have been the best way to defeat him. But Sozin is actually good at macro too, so I really don't want to take anything too much away from it. But Rydia looks very strong against Bryan. Looks like he might even top the group. I like his build order more than I like Bryan's right here. And something tells me Bryan, he is going to go for Lurkers, so.
Alright, so I mean, Lurkers are a great choice. They give you some map control. They're a defensive unit. You're not going to die to any kind of weird pressure timings as long as you have them set up and spread correctly. And on the other side of the map, it looks like Rydia is just getting out his kind of basic Marine medevac army. He wants to have that damage potential, get that healing out, and have a safe transition into the later game tech.
Yeah. So the first push, he does want to pop out the Marines from the bunker if he really wants to do damage with this push. You need those sunken colonies, which he does. Bryan would have too. They build very quickly, actually, to defend with for those lurkers. I brought up how mutas are generally the way of the game, but more we see lurkers. Lurkers are just easier, whether it's a ping issue or whether it's just I don't know how to control mutas. Mutas are an ideal way to play, but they are very hard to control. Lurkers, a bit easier, little more like turtle style as well, as you can get up to that higher tech. And perhaps Rita won't be able to break Bryan, but no lurkers quite ready to go yet.
If he identifies the third base, though, I mean, that's basically completely undefended. He can just walk up there and kill it, or at least force some really awkward move outs to try to defend it here. But it looks like he is going to be pushing into the natural. The lurkers are on their way. There's 2 sunken colonies here. Is he going to be able to break this wall? It's going to be tough.
Well, the lack of the third sunken might be the difference maker here. A couple fire bats included in a push too. Kentucky's really held out, but no fire bats necessary. Takes out both sunken. Target fire that lurker that's building.
Yeah. Actually, on top of it right now, with that lurker going down, there's just some lings to try to help this out. The third sunken does finally get up